You're 12 years old when the cell door closes behind you. Not slammed, not bolted, just gently, almost politely shut, like a hand placing a candle snuffer over a flame. There is no ceremony, no goodbye, just the slow metal creak of abandonment, followed by silence so thick it presses against your skull. The room is small, stone walls damp and veined with green, a single window cut too high for you to reach, letting in a grey shaft of light that never warms. The straw on the floor stinks of mould and old breath. The wooden bucket in the corner will be your only company for days, maybe weeks. You are Marie-Thérèse Charlotte, daughter of the guillotined queen, the last royal prisoner in the temple. At first, you wait. You think someone will come, your aunt, your brother, one of the few servants still loyal, even a guard with a kind face. But no one comes, not for hours, not for days. You stop counting after the first week because counting means remembering, and remembering hurts. The girl you were, the one who ran laughing through the marble halls of Versailles, who clung to her mother's skirts during masked balls, who fed sugar cubes to ponies with hands too small to hold them properly, that girl is evaporating. All that remains is this skin, this name, this silence. You try not to cry, not because you're brave, but because crying requires air, and air is in short supply. The cell smells of iron and dust and old blood, and when you breathe too deeply, you remember. You remember your father's last look, not fear, not defiance, but apology. You remember your brother screaming when they came for him, how his voice cracked like something splitting down the middle. You remember how the door opened one night and your mother was taken, how she turned to look at you once, and then vanished into the sound of boots and echoing footsteps. The next morning there were cheers outside, distant like a storm rolling through a valley. But you knew. Somewhere out there a crowd had watched your mother die and applauded. They cheered. They cheered. You learn not to ask questions. You learn to eat the food when it comes. Grey bread, cold soup, always tasteless, always late. You learn not to flinch when the guards stare too long. Some are cruel, some are kind. The kind ones are worse because you start to hope. One brings you a scrap of fabric once, a torn corner of what might have been a child's dress. It smells of vinegar and straw. You sleep with it against your cheek like a relic. When he disappears the next day, you don't ask why. You never see him again. Time becomes a hallucination. Daylight, candlelight, darkness. None of it matters. Your nails grow longer than you've ever seen them. Your skin turns grey. You try talking to yourself just to hear something, anything, but your voice sounds foreign, shrill, like a child imitating a ghost. So you go quiet. You don't pray anymore, not because you don't believe in God, but because he seems like another king, far away, surrounded by flatterers, deaf to the cries of girls in dark towers. One day you find a rat has drowned in your water bucket. You don't scream. You don't tell anyone. You sit beside it for hours, just staring. It looks peaceful, like it got tired and gave up. You envy it. They call you Madame Royale, as if the title still means something, as if that thin, shivering creature on the cell floor is still royalty. But titles don't warm your fingers. Titles don't keep you from forgetting your own voice. Sometimes, just sometimes, you think you hear your brothers breathing in the walls. You lean your ear to the stone, desperate for it. But it's just your own heart, slow and tired. You wonder if he's still alive. You wonder if he blames you. You wonder what they did to him in the room next door. When they finally open the door, months, maybe years later, you don't believe it. A man in clean clothes stands in the frame saying your name, gently, as if it's breakable. You don't move. He kneels. He reaches for your hand. And that's when you realize something terrifying. You no longer know how to be touched. Your body recoils without your permission, like a dog that's been kicked too many times. You hate it. You hate yourself. You hate the way your bones flinch, The way your eyes sting, the way the sound of your name feels like mockery. Marie-Thérèse, he says again, you're safe now. But safety is a word that means nothing. Your parents were safe once. So was Versailles. So was France. You step into the light, blinking like a newborn pulled from the womb too soon. Your dress hangs loose. Your body has shrunk. Your skin is papery. Your eyes too large. You do not recognize your reflection in the polished glass of the carriage window. The face looking back is older than your years. Hollowed, distant, already halfway gone. You survive the temple, but you're not the same. Before the silence, there was music. It drifted down the corridors of Versailles like perfume. Violins, laughter, polished shoes on marble. You were a child then, still small enough to be lifted by your mother, still young enough to believe that chandeliers were stars trapped inside palaces. Your world sparkled. Everything smelled of roses and powder. No one told you the ground beneath your feet was already splitting. You were born into a dream that was already dying. They called you Madame Royale, the daughter of the king, the living symbol of Bourbon glory. You wore lace before you could speak, bowed to courtiers before you could read. But even in your earliest memories, something felt wrong. You remember your mother, Marie Antoinette, walking faster through the gardens when she thought no one was watching. You remember your father's eyes, tired in a way no crown could fix. You remember the tension beneath the gold. The people outside the palace walls were hungry. You weren't supposed to hear them, but you did. You heard them chanting in the distance. And then one day they arrived. It was October. The air smelled of wet stone and something sour. They came with pikes and muskets, voices hoarse from shouting, feet caked with mud from the march. Your governess told you to stay back from the window, but you saw them anyway. Women with knives, men with rope, all of them screaming your mother's name. They didn't say it with reverence. They said it like a curse. When they dragged your family to Paris, you were still a child, but the noise never stopped. Every day brought new insults. They stared at you like you were an animal in a cage. Some laughed, some spat. You learned not to meet their eyes. You lived in the Tuileries Palace then. But it wasn't a palace anymore. It was a gilded cell. Your mother stopped wearing jewels. Your father stopped giving orders. You stopped being a princess and started becoming a prisoner. Then came the day your father disappeared behind a door and didn't come back. You didn't understand what trial meant. Not really. You only knew that the people who used to bow now pointed, that the soldiers who once guarded you now watched like vultures waiting for the last breath. You weren't allowed to see him before the end. They told you later. How he stood with dignity, how he forgave his enemies, how the blade came down clean. But none of that mattered. What mattered was that you didn't get to say goodbye. What mattered was that your little brother cried himself to sleep every night for weeks, asking for a father he would never see again. The next one to vanish was your mother. They came in the middle of the night. No warning, no time to dress. She kissed you once, hard and fast, like she knew it had to last forever. Her hand trembled on your cheek, but she didn't let you see her cry. She was still a queen in that moment. Then she was gone. You heard the crowds again the next morning. A sound like thunder, but sharper. It echoed off the prison walls. Someone said her name. You knew. Later you found out what they did to her, how they cut her hair, stripped her bare, tied her hands behind her back, how they jeered as she walked to the scaffold in a plain white shift, no crown, no dignity. Just a woman who once ruled France, now paraded like a criminal. And when the blade fell, they cheered like they were watching fireworks. You tried not to imagine it. You tried not to see her face in every flicker of candlelight. You failed. And then, your brother, the Dauphin, Louis Charles, the little king in name only. They took him away, promised he'd be safe. You never saw him again. They say he died slowly, in a cold room, alone, beaten, starved, forgotten. They say his jailers laughed while he wasted away. They say he forgot how to speak before the end. You still dream about him. Sometimes you see him in the garden at Versailles, holding out a wooden sword. Other times he's reaching for your hand through the bars of a cell, but you're too far away. You always wake before you can reach him. By 13, you were the only one left. Not just alone in a cell, but alone in the world. No family, no protection, just a royal name everyone wanted to forget. You weren't a queen. You weren't a threat. You were just inconvenient, a living relic of a fallen order. They called your mother Madame Deficit, your father Louis the Last, and you had no title anymore. Just a face that reminded people of a past they were trying to bury. They didn't know what to do with you, so they left you to rot. But you didn't. You kept breathing. You kept living. Because somehow, even in the darkest corner of the temple, even in the long cold nights where silence sounded like screams, you still believed that your mother's kiss meant something, that your brother's voice mattered. That memory itself was a kind of resistance. The guards stop saying your name. They call you her. Is she awake? Has she eaten? Move her to the other cell. You lose your name in pieces. First the titles, then the honorifics, then even Mademoiselle. What's left is the weight of being noticed only enough to be moved, never enough to be seen. You are the last one left, the daughter of the guillotined queen, the sister of the vanished king, the final prisoner of the temple. The silence is louder now. Your brother's room is empty, not cleaned, not repurposed, just left. The guards avoid it. You pass the door sometimes, and you think you can still hear the creak of his footsteps, the scrape of a bowl, a cough. But the room is still. You know better. They never told you he died. No one said it aloud. No one dared. They just stopped mentioning him, as if forgetting could erase what they'd done. But you knew, the moment they stopped feeding him, the moment you heard no more laughter, no footsteps, no crying, you knew he was gone, and you were still here. Your body begins to shift. You're growing into a woman, but you have no mirror, no needle, no voice to guide you. Blood stains your sheets and no one explains why. You are terrified. One of the guards mutters something about nature. Another throws a rag into the cell without looking you in the eye. You understand that you're becoming something vulnerable, something at risk. You learn to walk differently. Eyes down, steps silent. You avoid the corners of the cell where the shadows move when the guards linger too long. One of them stares when he thinks you aren't watching. Another laughs with too much hunger in his voice. You sleep facing the wall, fists clenched under the straw. There's no safety, only degrees of danger. You begin to count things, the cracks in the wall, the splinters on the bench, the number of days since you last spoke aloud. You test your voice sometimes, quietly, words like bread, window, mother. But the sound hurts your throat. It feels foreign. You begin to write in your head, composing sentences you never say. Whole conversations, arguments, memories, a life unfolding silently in your skull. Language becomes a secret you keep from the world. A physician visits once. He asks you questions you do not answer. He examines your wrists, your mouth, your spine. You hear him whisper to a guard afterward, "She is still useful, for now." You don't ask what he means. You already know. Even here, even in this ruined place, your body is a thing they might still trade. Then, one morning, the silence breaks. A key turns, a door opens. A voice calls your name, not like a question, but like a verdict. Marie-Thérèse Charlotte. It rings through the air like a bell cracked by time. You blink. You aren't sure you heard it right. They tell you you're being released. Released. Like a caged bird or a dangerous idea. You want to laugh, but your mouth won't move that way anymore. Your lips crack when you try. You haven't smiled in years. A diplomat steps into your cell. His clothes are clean, his hair powdered, his shoes polished. He flinches at the smell. You watch his nose wrinkle and you feel the sting of something worse than insult. Pity. You hate him for it. They hand you a dress. You don't recognize yourself in it. It feels like someone else's body, someone else's life. You walk differently now. You carry your arms close to your sides. You wince at sunlight. The guards don't look at you as you leave. The people on the streets don't recognize you. You pass through a city where your family was murdered and no one even stares. You're a living ghost, a relic from a chapter they are trying to forget. You climb into a carriage. The velvet feels too soft. You want to scream, but instead you sit straight and still like your mother taught you. You're not being rescued. You're being exchanged, like a prisoner of war, like a coin. They say you're going home, to Austria. But the only home you remember was torn apart brick by brick, body by body. This is not a return. It's an exile wrapped in courtesy. You don't cry. You don't thank them. You don't speak. You leave the temple behind. But the temple does not leave you. The carriage crosses the French border at night. They didn't want a crowd, no procession, no witness, just wheels on dirt and a girl behind a curtain. They said you were being sent home, but Austria isn't home. Versailles was home. Your brother's laughter in the garden, your mother's perfume in the corridors, your father's heavy footfall echoing down the long marble halls. All of it is gone. You are not returning. You are being removed. The guards call it a diplomatic arrangement. You call it what it is, a transaction, your body for theirs. You are traded like a captured general, a pawn on a political chessboard. You don't know who you replaced or who replaced you. You only know the price, silence, no questions, no outbursts, no memories spoken aloud. The Austrian border officer hesitates when he sees you. You're thinner than the portraits. Your skin is too pale. Your eyes too sunken. You do not look like royalty. You look like something the revolution failed to kill. He doesn't speak to you directly. No one has for days. Even the ambassador looks at you with a kind of reverent discomfort, as if you are a holy relic, untouchable, but also unsettling. You enter Austria in silence, and silence follows you. Schönbrunn Palace is colder than you remember. Not in temperature, but in atmosphere. You once ran through its halls in velvet shoes, laughing behind lace fans. Now you walk like a shadow. Heads turn when you pass, but no one knows what to say. What do you say to someone who survived the guillotine without losing her head? They try pleasantries, weather, fashion, music. But every note feels off-key. You answer in nods, short words. You've forgotten how to speak at length. Words feel dangerous now, too revealing, too sharp. Your voice is a locked drawer, and you've lost the key. They give you a suite in the palace, but it feels like another prison. Too quiet, too clean. You lie awake at night staring at the carved ceiling, remembering rats in the temple walls and the way your mother held your hand before they took her. You don't unpack your things. You keep a satchel by the bed. You expect to be moved again. You expect everything to vanish. Your aunt visits. The Empress. She smiles with her mouth, not her eyes. She tells you how strong you are, how proud your mother would be. Then she suggests you avoid speaking publicly about your time in France. It would upset the court, she says, placing a gloved hand over yours. Best to let it lie. The past is heavy. Don't carry it too far, you nod. But inside, something shrinks. You're 16 and already an old woman. There are whispers among the ladies in waiting. They say you're not the real Marie-Thérèse, that you died in the temple and were replaced by a commoner, that the real Madame Royale is buried under a false name in Paris, and this girl, this quiet, hollow creature, is an imposter. You hear the whispers. You do not correct them. Sometimes you think they might be right. Your body remembers things you no longer talk about. The clatter of boots on prison stairs, the weight of your mother's last kiss, the sound of a blade splitting the air followed by a cheer. These are not things you share over tea. You are paraded occasionally. Public dinners, diplomatic events, always dressed in pale colours, like a flower pressed between two pages, flattened, preserved, never blooming. You do what's expected. You curtsy. You smile. You do not speak unless spoken to. They say you're recovering. You know better. One day, a painter comes to make your portrait. He asks how you'd like to be posed. You tell him, standing. No crown, no throne, just standing. When he asks for a smile, you decline. The painting is completed in silence. When you see it later, you stare at your own eyes and feel nothing. You've become a symbol, a reminder of a kingdom that died screaming, a living monument to the end of an era. They give you tutors again, French, Latin, piano, as if you're a girl learning to be a woman. But you've already been both. You correct the tutor's grammar one morning and he flinches, not at the correction but at the sound of your voice. They hadn't heard it in weeks. You're asked to write letters to surviving nobles. Some are dead, some refuse to reply. The ones who do answer call you Your Highness. But the words feel empty. Titles are made of paper. You've seen how easily they burn. The years pass. You grow older, but not freer. Your silence becomes a kind of armour. People respect it, fear it. They say you're composed, stoic, dignified. But dignity is just trauma with better posture. In your quiet moments, before sleep, before dawn, you sometimes whisper into the pillow just to hear your own voice. You say your brother's name, your mother's name, your own name, as if reminding the world you're still here, as if reminding yourself. They tell you it's a duty, a way to restore what was broken, a step toward healing, as if your body were a wound that could be stitched closed with a ring. You're 19 when they present him, Louis-Antoine, Duke of Angoulême, your cousin, pale, stiff, uncertain, a man who walks like he's apologizing for being in the room. He's kind in the way court-trained men are taught to be, polite, rehearsed, distant. His hands tremble slightly when he kisses yours. He doesn't look you in the eye. You're told it's a match of shared history, both children of the exile, both blood of Bourbon. But blood alone does not make a marriage. You learned that long ago. You do not love him. You barely know him. But love is not the point. Your aunt says it softly, as though confessing something sacred. This will make things right. What things? A family beheaded? A brother buried in silence? A girl raised by ghosts? No one explains what right means. They only tell you what comes next. You try on the wedding gown. It is beautiful. Silk the colour of cream, threaded with silver lilies. You stand before the mirror and feel nothing. You look like a bride. You feel like a decoy. The ceremony is modest by royal standards. No trumpets, no grand cathedral. Just hushed voices, solemn vows, and the unmistakable scent of expectation in the air. You say the words without faltering. You place your hand in his. You feel how cold his skin is. Everyone watches. Everyone smiles. But no one sees. That night they dress you in white lace. You sit at the edge of the bed, spine straight, palms sweating against the embroidered sheets. Louis-Antoine enters slowly, as if walking into a room where something might explode. You think of your mother, of her wedding night, of what she must have felt, of what she must have endured. He is gentle. But gentleness is not a solution. His hands are unsure, his voice barely above a whisper. The silence between you feels like another person in the room, older, colder, watching. Afterward you lie beside him, eyes wide open, your body untouched in all the ways that matter. He falls asleep quickly as if relieved. You stay awake staring at the ceiling. No blood, no pain, no tears, just emptiness. You tell yourself this is better than violence. But emptiness too is a kind of wound. Days become months. You learn his rhythms. He reads scripture in the morning, walks in the gardens after dinner, avoids confrontation. He tries to please you, but it's the politeness of a man afraid of breaking what he's been handed. You're not a woman to him. You're the daughter of Marie Antoinette, a living memorial, too sacred to touch, too tragic to reach. You begin to understand that this marriage is not a union. It is a preservation, a glass case around a relic, a seal on a story France cannot quite bear to read again. You do not conceive. The court watches closely at first, whispers behind gloves, calculations, speculation. But the months pass, then the years, and your womb remains silent. Some say your body is broken, some say you were damaged in prison, some say trauma made your insides cold. You do not correct them. The truth is simpler and heavier. You do not want to carry a child into this legacy. You do not want to bring another life into a world that cheered when your mother was led to the scaffold. You do not want to create something that will be used. Your silence becomes your resistance. You occupy your days with duties, charitable works, letters to exiled nobles, visits to churches with long shadows and quieter pews. You develop a fondness for painting, but never of people. Landscapes, architecture, places where no faces can ask for anything. Louis Antoine becomes king in name only, briefly during the Bourbon Restoration. You become queen in title alone. You never wear a crown. The people do not cheer, not this time. They bow, but it is out of obligation, not devotion. You remind them of a history they do not want to revisit. You walk through the halls of the palace with quiet grace. They call it dignity. But you know better. It is armour. The marriage continues. Not in love, but in momentum. Two bodies moving through shared space, occasionally touching hands at formal dinners, occasionally sitting beside each other in long carriages, staring out opposite windows. You grow older. Your voice becomes softer, your smiles rarer. You begin to fade in the way only living people can. Not into death, but into memory. One evening, you stand alone in the mirror-lit corridor of your residence. You see your reflection and realize something strange. You have become your mother, not in appearance, but in posture, in the way your hands rest against your skirt, in the quiet sorrow that lives behind your eyes. You married not for love, but for survival, just like she did. And now, like her, you carry a silence too vast for words. They tell you you're going back, not to Versailles, not to the temple, but to France, the country that killed your family, burned your history and forgot your name. Now, it wants you to return, as a symbol, as a queen. It is 1814. Napoleon has fallen. The Bourbons are back. The streets that once howled for blood now string up white flags and polish the stones where guillotines once stood. They want forgiveness now, or something close enough to it that they can sell to history. You step off the carriage in silence. The crowd cheers. It is not the roar of revolution this time, but something quieter, controlled, manufactured. Children wave flags they don't understand. Women drop flowers at your feet. Men remove their hats as if welcoming a saint. But you remember their faces, not the same names, but the same mouths, the same eyes that watched your mother's hair fall into the basket, the same fingers that reached for your brother through the bars, first to bless him, then to spit on him. No one says what happened. No one speaks of the scaffold, of the trials, of the crowd's laughter. They say, "Your Majesty," now. You say nothing. Louis XVIII greets you with a practiced smile. He's bloated, powdered, soft around the eyes. Your uncle, now king. He opens his arms like a father. You let him hold you, though every bone in your body tightens. His embrace smells of cologne and politics. He speaks of restoration, of peace, of France returning to itself. But France isn't returning, it's reinventing. You walk through the Tuileries, where you once lived as a girl, where you watched your mother's mouth tighten each time a servant forgot how to bow. The furniture is different. The paintings changed. Even the air smells wrong. They've whitewashed the past, scrubbed the blood from the stones, hung new curtains over the memory of screams. There is no plaque for your brother, no statue of your father, no portrait of your mother. It's not a palace. It's a mausoleum trying to smile. You attend court functions dressed in silks you do not feel. The nobles bow, but their eyes flit away too fast. They do not want to meet the gaze of the girl who survived what they all pretended never happened. Your presence is a wound. You smile when you must. You speak only when spoken to. They praise your composure, but you are not composed. You are contained. You see Versailles again, briefly. A visit arranged for appearances. The gates open slowly, the garden still immaculate, but it is empty, hollow, a shell. The mirrors do not reflect what they used to. The laughter that once echoed here has gone silent. You stand in the hall of mirrors, hands clasped before you, and remember your mother's footsteps clicking across the marble. You remember the scent of lilies in her wake. You remember how her back always stayed straight, even as the world around her crumbled. You do the same. Outside, the people say you are dignified, that you have forgiven France. You haven't. But you've learned to wear forgiveness like a veil, thin enough to see through, thick enough to hide behind. In quiet moments, you walk the gardens alone. You do not speak to the trees. You do not kneel at the fountains. You simply walk, heel to toe, slowly, evenly, as if the rhythm can protect you from remembering. Sometimes you hear footsteps behind you. You don't turn. You know there's no one there, just ghosts. You stay in France for a time, smile at the dinners, attend the mass, accept the nods and the half-hearted curtsies. But you do not call it home. You never will. When the tensions rise again, when France starts to shift once more beneath your feet, you do not wait to be asked. You leave, not in exile, not in disgrace, just quietly, as if you were never there, as if they had only imagined you. You live in rooms with heavy drapes, not because of sunlight, because of what the light might reveal. In Frosdorf, in Hradčany, in Holyrood, in every cold palace you pass through, the curtains are thick, the windows tall, the mirrors veiled. You tell the staff it's for privacy, but privacy is just another name for containment. There are no portraits of your mother on the walls, none of your brother, not even of yourself. You do not need reminders. Their faces live beneath your skin, and when you close your eyes they come, not in dreams but in flashes, blood, screams, cold breath in a stone corridor, your mother turning her head one last time. You don't speak of it, not to your ladies-in-waiting, not to your husband, not to God. Even your confessions are silent. They ask you to write your memoirs. The publishers come with pens and reverent voices. They say it's your duty to preserve history, but you know what they want. Not the truth, not the girl in the tower. They want spectacle, a royal tragedy they can sell by the page. You try. Once. You sit at your desk, quill in hand, parchment smooth beneath your wrist. You write 2 words, temple, night. Then you stop. The pen drips ink. A stain spreads. You stare at it until the candle burns low. You never return to the page. Instead, you write letters. Dozens, hundreds, to exiled nobles, to former allies, to distant cousins who survived the fire. You write about the present, never the past. You discuss meals, health, weather. You describe things like someone watching from far away, detached, floating. You become known for your manners, your grace, your remarkable silence. They call you strong. They say you endured. They say you survived. But you know better. You didn't survive. You remained. There is a difference. In the quiet corridors of your exile, rumours start to surface. Whispers that you never left the temple, that you died there, and another girl was smuggled out in your place, a servant's daughter, a double. The story spreads. The Dark Countess, they call her. The woman living in mysterious seclusion in Germany. Pale, reclusive, haunted. People say she is you, that the real Marie-Thérèse never escaped. You hear the rumours, you say nothing. Some days, even you wonder. Because who are you really? The last daughter of the Ancien Regime, the queen who never reigned, the child prisoner grown into a quiet ghost. There are days you cannot remember the sound of your own voice. Days when the silence inside your chest is louder than any scream you ever heard. Louis-Antoine never asks. He walks beside you, dines beside you, sleeps beside you, but he never asks what you remember. Maybe he's afraid of the answer. Maybe he already knows. You grow old slowly, not gracefully. Grace implies ease. You grow old like stone softens in the wind, gradually, quietly, the sharp edges wearing away, your hair greys, your hands curl, your bones ache, but you still walk upright. Your mother did, even on the scaffold. So will you. You no longer cry, not because you're numb, because tears are a luxury, and grief, true grief, is a task that requires strength you spent long ago. You pray now, not to be saved, just to be seen. You ask no miracles, just remembrance, because that is what you fear more than death. Not pain, not exile, but being forgotten. One night, you sit alone in the candlelight. The windows are closed. The room smells of wax and rosewater. You place a single object on the table before you, a lock of hair tied in ribbon, golden, faded, untouched since the temple, your brother's. You hold it for a long time, not weeping, just breathing. Just remembering that once there was a boy, small and bright, who slept beside you in a prison cell and believed his sister could protect him. You couldn't, but you kept this. Not a crown, not a title, just this. You place it back in the box and seal it shut. Tomorrow they will ask you to join them for tea. They will compliment your embroidery, praise your posture, mention the weather. You will smile, you will nod, you will say nothing. Because silence has become your kingdom, and memory is the only throne you still sit upon. You outlive them all. The men who signed your mother's death warrant, the guards who laughed outside your cell, the priests who blessed the blade, the revolutionaries who promised utopia and delivered ashes. You live through the revolution, the terror, the Directory, the empire, the restoration, and the exile that followed it all. You watch France shed skin after skin, each regime pretending it was never the one before. They change the flags, rewrite the songs, rename the streets, but the blood in the stones never washes clean. You are the last living memory of a world they buried, and still you breathe. You settle in Frostorf, a grey estate in the Austrian countryside tucked among low hills and mist-heavy trees. The corridors are narrow, the windows draughty. It is not a palace, but it is quiet. And quiet is all you ask for now. You do not wear mourning anymore, not because the grief has lifted, but because it never changes. It is no longer a season, it is the weather. Visitors come sometimes, diplomats, loyalists, curious nobles with names that still remember the past. They speak to you with caution, reverence, apology, as if they're afraid your sorrow might spill across the table and stain their gloves. You do not tell them what it cost to remain alive. You do not speak of the nights you woke gasping, of the times you pressed your hand to your chest to make sure your heart still beat, of the mornings when your hands shook too badly to lift a spoon. You simply pour their tea, nod when they praise your composure, and let them leave believing they've seen strength. But strength isn't what kept you alive. It was something else. Stubbornness maybe, or defiance, or some quiet oath made in the dark of the temple that you would not let them take everything. You remember every name, every face. You keep the memory of your family the way some people keep icons, sacred, unspoken, burning. When Louis-Antoine dies, you do not weep. He was a kind man, a broken man, a faithful shadow. But grief has rules, and yours were written long before his passing. You bury him with dignity, with silence, just as you have buried everything else. In your final years you walk slowly. Your cane taps the stone floor like a metronome. Your attendants try to help, but you wave them off. You still carry yourself like a queen, even if no one calls you that anymore. You begin to forget small things, a name, a day, a place you once lived. But the memories that matter never fade. Your brother's laughter, your mother's hand in yours, The sound of the crowd outside the prison on the day she died, the silence that followed. You live long enough that the children of your enemies have children of their own. They grow old, never knowing what you carried, what it means to survive when survival is the cruelest path. And then, finally, it comes. Not a fall, not a fever, just stillness. A moment in the dark where the breath does not return. You die in 1851. No crown on your head, no grand tomb waiting. Just a name etched in history with too little ink and too much weight. Marie-Thérèse Charlotte of France, the woman who refused to die. They tore it down. The Temple Tower, your prison, your tomb while still alive, was demolished brick by brick in 1810. Napoleon didn't want it standing. It reminded people of what they had done, of what they let happen, so they erased it from the skyline. But you know the truth. Stone remembers. Even when the walls are gone, the silence remains. Tourists walk the streets now, where the tower once cast its long shadow. Children chase pigeons across the courtyard. Couples hold hands, passing over the same ground where your brother last breathed. No plaque marks the place. No monument tells the truth. But if you stop, if you close your eyes, you can still hear it. The scrape of a tin plate on stone, the cough of a dying child, the low moan of someone praying through clenched teeth. It lingers, because pain leaves behind echoes. Some say it was mercy to destroy it, that it gave the city a chance to move forward. But you've learned. People don't destroy what they're done with. They destroy what haunts them. You haunted them. You didn't write your story. Others did. They called you stoic, tragic, saintly. But they didn't see you wake up in the middle of the night, gasping from a dream you never asked to carry. They didn't watch your fingers tremble over your brother's lock of hair. They didn't hear the way your breath caught when someone spoke your mother's name. They wrote about a queen who never ruled. But you were never meant to rule. You were meant to endure. And you did. Not through grandeur, not through vengeance, but through small, stubborn choices, through silence weaponized into armor, through memory preserved in secret, through love that no executioner could extinguish. History forgot you because you didn't bleed loud enough. You didn't die on a scaffold. You didn't burn cities or lead armies or curse your enemies with famous last words. You simply survived. And sometimes that's the most terrifying thing of all. Because survival tells the truth about what came before. It tells the story no one wants to hear. That kings fall. That revolutions rot. That behind every throne and guillotine and flag, there are children learning how to grieve in the dark. Your story is not carved in marble, but it is there, in the gaps between the lines of history books, in the silences of the archives, in the way France avoids saying your name too often, in the way they remember your mother's diamonds but not your brother's death. They forget because remembering costs too much. But you remembered for them. You carried it. Every year, every breath, every quiet moment in a room with drawn curtains. You bore the weight of a nation's guilt so it wouldn't have to. And now the world turns. The past becomes wallpaper. The names become trivia. Versailles is a museum. The monarchy a memory. The blood washed away. The blades dulled. The songs rewritten. But sometimes, if you stand in the right street, at the right time, and the wind blows just so, you can feel it. A whisper in the stone, a name caught in the dust, a girl in a locked room still waiting, Marie-Thérèse, daughter of a doomed queen, sister of a dead king, the last royal prisoner, the girl who was never meant to live, but did.